David sat in his dimly lit room, the soft glow of his phone screen illuminating his face as he scrolled through messages. An unexpected notification caught his attention, and he eagerly opened it, revealing a selfie sent by his friend Matthew. As the image materialized on his screen, David's eyes widened in astonishment. Matthew stood before the camera, draped in a delicate pink dress that seemed to belong to a different world, one of soft curves and delicate femininity. His once short hair had grown into gentle waves, cascading gracefully around his face. What struck David most was how Matthew's appearance had transformed in the few weeks since he had last seen him. He had always thought of his friend as masculine, but he had now started to radiate an undeniable femininity. There was a softness in his once angular features. The confident gaze has been replaced by a shyness that made David want to reach out and wrap his arms around Matthew. His own arms ached with the training and conditioning he himself was receiving. Unlike Matthew, he had already started receiving additional testosterone. That, and the constant physical activity, had made his frame and musculature widen and thicken. His arms had started to bulge with newly forming muscles. David's gaze lingered on Matthew's own arms in the image. There was a plumpness and a softness there that hinted instead at a distinct lack of muscle. He zoomed in on the image, his fascination growing with each new detail he discovered about his friend. David's gaze lingered on Matthew's legs, captured by their newfound feminine elegance. They seemed longer and more slender than he remembered. The pink dress hugged Matthew's form, accentuating the curves that had emerged. David couldn't help but feel a stirring of attraction. He stood up and slowly slipped off his shirt. His chest and arms felt warm as he pointed his own phone at his muscular upper body. "You took my breath away," he added, and sent through his own selfie. Matthew's phone lit up with the message from David, and he couldn't help but feel a rush of anticipation as he opened it. The image revealed David, shirtless and bathed in soft moonlight, showcasing his well-defined muscles. A sly grin played on David's lips, and his eyes held a spark of mischief. Matthew felt a bit flustered, his heart quickening as he admired David's masculine form. He didn't know why, but he felt warm at the gradual increase in the contrast between their bodies. There was a strange awakening in him that he knew was a stirring of his own new feminine desires. He slipped under the covers and stared at the screen. Communication between them was frowned upon until their respective transitions were complete, but it was not a hard rule. "Well, hello there, Mr. Muscles. Quite the unexpected treat," he typed out. After a few seconds, a reply popped up. "Looking for a personal trainer? The soft and curvy look suits you." Matthew blushed and buried further under the covers as he replied, "Does it? I feel so different. Happy, but different and feminine. I like that. It's hard to believe you were the same person from when we were kids." Matthew's fingers hovered, unsure what to say in reply. He had felt the same, conflicted between strange, new womanly feelings and those from their shared past. The pregnancy image came to him, David's arms around him while he was so swollen. Matthew sighed and pulled his legs up closer and curled himself into a ball under the sheets. David replied again, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you sad. I'm just having thoughts about us." Matthew stared at the screen. Was David having hypnotic sessions of his own? He typed out, "I am too. Things like those between man and a woman." Matthew Matthew's heart was thudding in his chest. After a few moments of silence, his phone began to hum with an incoming call. He quickly pressed disconnect, then typed back, "We can't. It's forbidden. I'm sorry." He slipped the phone under his pillow and tried to put the image of David out of his mind. He needed to get to sleep before this got out of hand. It took an enormous effort, and he was almost successful. But then the phone pinged once more with a new message. "Okay. Sleep tight, my love." Matthew gave a soft little squeal and covered his lips at the last word. His eyes closed, and he fell into a deep sleep with dreams about David. In the dream, the sun hangs low on the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the beach and its crashing waves. Matthew and David stand side by side, their toes sinking into the soft, damp, sun-kissed sand. David, tall and strong, stands bare-chested, his muscles rippling in the soft breeze, damp with swim he just had. His eyes are fixed on the horizon, a sense of contentment etched in his features. His eyes shift and gaze at the womanly shape of his wife beside him. Matthew, now curvy and undeniably female, stands beside him. She is wearing a flattering one-piece green and blue bikini that accentuates her feminine curves. Her blonde hair flows gently in the breeze, a cascade of golden waves that mirror the ocean before them. His eyes draw lower over her womanly hips and her long, shapely legs. His thoughts are disrupted by the sound of laughter, and he turns his head. Their 3 children are playing on the shore nearby, their laughter and joy filling the air. The kids build sandcastles, chase seagulls, and occasionally run to their parents, their faces flushed with excitement. After a moment, the youngest calls out, "Mommy, you look like a mermaid." Mom and Dad laugh. David bends low and strong, warm fingers grasp Matthew around the waist, lifting her easily up in the air. She squeals, but stretches out her hands to the setting sun, feeling so light and petite in the arms of her big, strong husband. "She can't be a mermaid if she has legs like that," David calls out. Her eyes close, and she feels herself cradled in his arms. Happiness washes over her in soft, warm waves. Matthew sat in the softly lit room back at the gender center. Today, he was meeting with Sarah once again to discuss the next crucial step in his journey, a surgical procedure to sever the testosterone production in his body and introduce the implants that would facilitate the natural generation of estrogen within his body. Sarah entered the room, her presence a comforting constant in his journey. Her warm smile conveyed both understanding and support as she took a seat across from Matthew. "Matthew," she began, "I want to discuss the next phase of your transition. We'll be performing a procedure to sever the testosterone-producing function of your body. This will effectively put an end to your biological male life and start you on becoming hormonally female." She paused for a moment. This is also generally considered the moment where you are socially no longer considered male. There are a range of other related legal and environmental changes you will need to agree to. Matthew nodded. He has been through all of this numerous times before in great detail. But this time, the medical charts and the imaging behind Sarah were his own, not some unknown new female. Sarah continued, explaining the technicalities of the procedure, the potential side effects, and the steps involved in ensuring a safe and successful transition. She detailed the implants that would be introduced, explaining how they would enable his body to generate estrogen naturally. As you undergo this procedure, Sarah said, you'll notice both physical and emotional changes. Your body will gradually align more closely with your true feminine identity, and that alignment will be permanent. It's really important you understand that you are fully committing to being a woman. She said finally, "Any questions?" Matthew nodded, but he did have a question. When you were in this seat years ago, before you took this step, what were you thinking? And what would you tell your younger self looking back? Sarah leaned back in her seat. She had been asked many questions from many new females, some of fear, some of doubt, some of joy, some with utter impatience to proceed. But never this. Sarah smiled and said, "Gender is a very malleable thing. Maybe not sexuality, but gender, definitely." She leaned forward and pushed a set of forms towards Matthew. "Follow your happiness always." Matthew stared at the dotted line with the name Amelia printed underneath, his new name. All he saw in his mind's eye was David, lifting his wife up in the air while their children laughed and played on the beach. She picked up the pen and signed above the dotted line,